Pio is a multi-award-winning theatre performer, singer, dancer, actress, and creator with over 30 years of experience. She is also the head mentor and facilitator for the Vula Amehlo and Columba Leadership Expressive Arts Program.
Welcome, guys.
Hi.
Hi, I'm so glad that you are here joining in this conversation today. Thank you for joining me. So please maybe just tell our viewers who you are, introduce yourselves, and a little bit about yourselves. Go ahead.
Thank you, Sam. My name is Maria Lidwaba, but Mariah most of the times. I'm a Columba alumni. I'm currently a social action facilitator at Kenilworth, where she studies, and I'm also an expressive arts coach. We partnered with MIC and Vula Amehlo. And recently we had a workshop, and we were co-facilitating with Sam here. That's it about me.
My name is Sindisiwe G. Mahlangu. I am a learner at Kenilworth Secondary School, as she said, in grade 10. I became a member of MIC Vula Amehlo last year. That is when I met Sam.
Yes. It was so exciting, obviously, to meet Cindy, first of all, last year, just because she was very quiet when we started engaging. And I remember her pulling me to her one day, I think it was maybe the first day of the workshop. And she basically said, I've got this entire book of poetry, and I would really just love you to hear one of them. And she read her poem to me, and she was very quiet and very shy, but the poem was brilliant. And then later that day, she performed it. And Cindy now is the most prolific writer, and she is an amazing performer. So it's great to have her here. And then Miss Mariah as well. We met each other on the training course at NIROX. Yeah. We led the training for the facilitators to be able to go into the school and facilitate with me on the Expressive Arts Program. And Miss Mariah as well is a brilliant poet. And that's why they're here today.
16-year-old girl who was tortured in jail for my beliefs. And when I got out, all my family could talk about was the weather.
Our guest is an award-winning poet, author, presenter, actress, and producer. She is a South African household name who is most recognizable for her lyrical and gusty poetry, which has captivated audiences in 28 countries over the last 2 decades. Welcome, Lebo Mashile.
You and I, we are the keepers of dreams. We mold them into light beams and weave them into life's seams. You and I, we are the keepers of dreams. We mold them into light beams and weave them into life's seams. You and I. No, life is not what it seems. We strip the fat from the lean and find the facts in between. The visions we redeem and the agony of choice. Yours is just a mind and mine is just a voice. But when we love with the heat that would rise like a song in flight on the flesh of our backs. If it's love that we lack, then we walk with the pain that we seek, the love exchange that we spite. As we move through indecisions, rising in hope, fading in fright, we ride the crest of intuition on the journey of this life. And by the hands of the infinite, we hear the cries of the rest, weighed down by their intelligence, submitting to this test. But you and I push the boundaries of reason. You and I plot the mysteries of seasons. You and I paint this history to free men. Nothing can be stopped like you and I. We are the keepers of dreams. We mold them into light beams and weave them into life's seams. You and I.
Welcome, Lebo. It is so wonderful to have you join us. Thank you.
It's an absolute pleasure. I'm so happy to be here. Thank you for having me.
Yay, we're so excited. Okay, so we have just completed our first workshop program in the schools. Okay. And as a first task, a lot of the participants were asked, who am I? Right? So, Miss Lebo, if I had to ask you, who are you? What would you say?
Ooh, I guess first of all, I mean that question is such an interesting and important and like an ongoing question. Like you can ask yourself that question every single day of your life and get a different answer. You can ask yourself that question with every single project that you do as an artist and find a new aspect of yourself, you know? What am I? Okay, who am I? I am I'm an artist. I'm a Black woman. I'm a feminist. I'm a mom of 2. I'm an African. I'm South African. What am I? I'm a daughter. I'm a sister. I am a watcher of series and a reader of books and an orderer of Uber Eats and a drinker of coffee and a liker of nice things and a traveler. And the traveler,
Yes.
yeah.
Yes, thank you. So that always feels like when someone just tells you a little bit about themselves, it feels like we're hearing about the story of you.
Yes.
And that's why I love storytelling, right?
Yes.
And for some reason, we as human beings, we do this. We take the human experiences that we encounter every day and we communicate that to others in the form of a story. Yes. Like basically you can say, today I woke up and I fell over the dustbin by mistake, and then I was late for work, and then, you tell everything in the form of stories.
Yes.
And so looking back over your life as well, you can feel like you have a multitude of these little minor stories that then come together to create this entire story of you, right? And that's kind of powerful, don't you think? Storytelling.
There's something eternal about narrative. It's like we need story to make sense of ourselves, and we need stories to be able to make sense of the world, politics is a story. Economics is a story. National identity is a story, and I think what's also really interesting is that there's always a story about ourselves, about other people, and about the world that's happening in our heads all the time. So even that is something that we can like question and also shape and change, Yes. And I think we're living in this era where there's all this new media, all this new interesting social media that didn't exist, when I was starting out as an artist, none of this existed. There was no Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, Twitter. There was no LinkedIn. There was no nothing like that. It was like the early days of the internet, And now it's like each person can be their own platform. But even with the new media, storytelling is still important, right? The influencers that really work and that are able to grab people's attention and that are able to expand even beyond those mediums are people who are telling a story about themselves, about their craft, about what they're presenting. So narrative, it all comes back to if you can tell a great story, you can work in any medium.
Exactly. And the other thing is, sometimes if we continue to tell ourselves the same stories about ourselves, they become like belief systems, right? And then it's important to kind of update all the time, right?
Yes.
And we were having a conversation the other day about the fact that so much has happened over the last few years, where it feels like the person you thought you were before the pandemic suddenly feels like, am I really this person? And it has me questioning all sorts of stories I might have told myself.
Yes.
Right? So it's important to always update. And then the other thing which I found completely fascinating, just listening to the stories, was that we have these stories about ourselves, but there's not a single person who will see us in the same way. So you will have a different experience of Sam.
Yes.
You will have a different experience of Sam. You will have a different experience of Sam. And it's completely different to the story I have of Sam.
Yes.
Right? Which then kind of makes you also go, okay, well, I can't live my life trying to please anyone.
This is it.
Yeah, that's true.
Right?
Yeah.
You just have to live it for yourself.
And if you look at it like that, then it's a lot easier to accept being wrong. It's a lot easier to accept being the villain in other people's stories, you know? Because maybe I didn't realize in that moment, I thought that I was defending myself or protecting myself or, you know, telling my truth or whatever. But actually, I was wrong. I was 100% wrong, you know? And it's interesting. I mean, like, I find even as I get older, it's a lot easier for me to even play characters who are people I don't like. Or I find the parts of myself and the parts of other people that I don't like or that I wouldn't necessarily choose or that I do see in myself but I don't want to.
Yeah.
Those things are a lot more interesting. They're so much more compelling.
Right?
Yeah.
That's exactly right. And why is it as actresses as well? There's often parts that you want to play and it is the villain. Because like you say, it's more fascinating. It allows you to do what you don't normally do in life.
They make cooler choices. They don't care what other people think. They're brave. They're courageous. And I think especially like as girls, women, we always taught like, you know, you have to make other people happy. Other people have to be okay with you. You have to, you know, you can sense what's happening energetically in the room around you all the time. And there always has to be some kind of peace. You're not allowed to fail. That was one of the big things for me, you know, and then I still have to like bang my head up against is that, oh, you know, you can't fail. How can you fail? I'm an artist. I chose this life. I'm a black woman. I'm the daughter of a single mother.
Yeah.
I have no option. I can't fail. Like, who the hell am I to not fail? In fact, failure is one of the most interesting parts of the creative process. When something doesn't work, it's like, oh, it's a revelation. Like scientists get so excited when things fail. They're like, oh yes, our hypothesis, we tested it, it's failed. This is wonderful. Now we know it doesn't work. But us, we have to be perfect all the time.
Yeah.
I'd actually love to agree with that because I feel like we spend too much time worrying about what other people think of us, which is actually a waste of our time. So I've learned the hard way that, look, I as Cindy have to prioritize myself. I need to learn to look at what I love doing instead of minding like, what are my teachers going to say? What is my brother going to say? Instead, what I do is for me, not for anyone else, especially as a female, as you say, a black female, is that we are raised that we're supposed to do certain things a certain way, which is not true because it kind of like puts us in this category where we can do things that we actually want to do.
You can't experiment.
Yeah.
You can't be real. You can't be vulnerable. You know, you can't make mistakes. You can't be curious. You can't like be, oh, I don't know how I feel about this. I've mixed feelings about this. I can't express that. What's interesting about that kind of a life? If you get that at your age, oh my God, that's a huge gift. That's a huge gift.
What grade are you in again?
I'm in grade 10.
Amazing.
Baby.
Amazing.
Mature baby. So then talking about making mistakes, you know, and the creative process, if you think about how many drafts you have to write before your poem is complete, right?
Yo.
The worst.
Yo. You know, so I used to have a thing where I could only write poetry by hand. I could write other things like essays or columns or whatever else, an email, whatever on the computer. But for years I was like, I have to write poetry by hand because I had a whole thing about how the hand moves in a different way. And then, you know, the more I became dependent on my phone and my tablet and everything, I just started writing anywhere. It was easier to pull my phone out and write quickly. But so I can write anywhere. But I find recently I'm returning back to writing poetry by hand because I can see the things that I've crossed out. Unlike on the phone where you have to delete or deliberately like leave it and kind of create a reference for myself that this part I'm not using, but I'm keeping it here on the page so I can see it. It's a lot more complicated.
Right.
And there's value sometimes in what I've crossed out, like later. You know, like if I'm editing and I realize that, okay, actually maybe that section I might want to change. In fact, maybe my original idea, maybe there was something good there. Let me see if I can rework that. If I've deleted it,
Yes, gone.
it's gone.
And the older you get, it is gone.
It's really gone. There's something really wonderful about being able to see, like, oh, okay, this piece ended up being whatever 2.5 minutes, but actually, this is like 10 pages of working through ideas and writing to get to this. This is the work.
Exactly. So talking again about the process of writing, and maybe you can all weigh in on this, is do you find sometimes poems or an idea for a poem or just an entire stanza maybe comes to you and it's like this, and you think, where did that come from, right? And other times it's a graft to get things, right? You have to, like, especially if you have a deadline. Have you ever had that when you have a deadline and you know Sam has asked me now to do this thing tomorrow, grinding it out, right?
It actually happened on the camp. Remember when you gave us one night and then tomorrow we have to perform our pieces. So yeah, I believe we all get that. The writer's block, where you literally you don't have ideas, but yet you know what you want to write about, but then yet you have a block. Literally, there's nothing on your mind. Yeah.
You know, the funny thing is that for me, it comes when I'm like walking home from school and I just start reciting a whole stanza. Then when I get to the door, it's gone. When I have to write something I have to do at school or in front of the school, I just sit there for like 2 days or 3 days. I'm like, okay, Cindy, what am I going to write now? So yeah, writer's block is the worst.
What do you think writer's block is? What do you think is happening inside when that happens to us?
I believe for me it's where I literally cannot produce or write anything, literally. And I have a major slowdown. And I think it's also caused by self-doubt. When I'm doubting myself, when I feel like, nah, this is not worth it, it's not good, it's not that. And then that's where my mind just goes blank. And it's very tough to kick out of that, literally. I do not know. I cannot tell you how I kick out of that, but sometimes I manage to, go back to I manage to motivate myself and then continue writing. But it's very difficult. And it's one of the questions that I want to ask you. How do you overcome that? Because it's very demotivating. For some people, they literally quit writing permanently. Like they just quit because it's not a good thing to experience.
Oof.
Yeah.
Such a great question and so many wonderful reflections in what you both have said, what everybody's saying. I still struggle with writer's block, even when I earn a living, like as an artist. I get people commission me to write and come and perform, and I will get blocked like you for days and days and days. I'll have 50 million other things to say and other pieces that start and other ideas and things that are coming, inspired by everything, doom scrolling on TikTok, except for the thing that I have to write, that I have to get on stage and perform in 3 days. That one is not gonna come. So I mean, there are lots of techniques, and you can kind of, as you were saying before, like the beautiful thing about the brain is that it's like clay. You can actually, you can reshape it, you can remold it, There's a lot of literature and schools of thought around how writing, what we think writing is has more to do with writer's block. Who we think we are has more to do with writer's block than our actual abilities to write. So like the story that you are telling yourself about yourself as a writer, the story that you're telling yourself about writing, the story that you're telling yourself about your worthiness, your talent, your intelligence, your creativity, the thing that horrible thing that the teacher said to you in grade 6, all that stuff, right? Now that comes to the fore when you have to create, because creativity is like it's like the ultimate assertion, expression of self. It's saying, even when you're writing a piece of fiction, you're saying, this is who I am. This is who I am. And you have to be okay with yourself, to give yourself permission to say, this is who I am, But like we live in this world where, the way that we get taught, the things that we get exposed to in the media, just the way that we are conditioned, so much of it breaks us down as people, breaks down our sense of self, our self-esteem, Then you realize that you're young and you're talented and you've got this ability with language, you can write, and now you have to work past all of that breaking to actually figure out like who you really are. So it's not just you, like every writer that I know struggles with writing. every writer I know hates writing and loves having written. Every writer I know loves the final product.
Yeah.
Every writer I know loves it when other people connect with their work. Every writer I know has deep anxiety when they have to sit down and face the blank page. But it doesn't have to be permanent, you know? I mean, what you were talking about with walking, there is a direct connection between movement, breath. Walking is like meditation, you know, like breathing is like meditation. Taking a shower, being with water, washing, cleansing yourself is like a meditation. Like sometimes when we do things that are very repetitive, doing the dishes, you know,
that's it.
You do something very mundane, very repetitive, where your body is in motion, and it's like your brain forgets its anxiety, and then suddenly the words come, you know.
Yeah.
So you can integrate stuff like that into your daily habits to just make it possible for your brain to trick itself, so that you can be like, oh, actually, there's stuff going on behind my anxiety. That's not the only voice inside my head. There actually is.
Yes.
There is my creativity there. It's there. It's got something to say.
I also think that school teaches us what to think.
Yeah.
And you're petrified about making a mistake because there's one right answer. There's one right answer. And I think that's conditioned into our brain as well. You suddenly think, I've got this task to do. I've got to create something. I'm freaking out because what is the right way? What's right? What's going to be the right answer to that? When there is none, right? And it is just a rambling down your the rabbit hole of your brain. You should just be allowed to tumble down it and play. And I think play is what allows creativity to flourish. Because when you think it's work, it freezes up.
Yes.
For me, it freezes up. I know that blank page, facing a blank page is the worst feeling. Right.
I feel like that's where it comes to my point that we as writers are our worst critics. We tend to put too much pressure on, especially things like poetry. You tend to overthink the words you want to write. But when you just do it for fun, when you're like, you know, I have so many ideas, let me just put this down, and it just works out. But once we are given a task like, okay, tomorrow I want this thing, we start to judge our own writing. We start to keep going over it and be like, no, this word, but it's actually the right word. So I feel like every writer is basically the worst critic.
Yes. Yeah.
How do we change that?
Ooh. I mean, it's kind of like the same thing that is your greatest blessing is also your greatest curse, right? That over analytical, super observant, super sensitive, you know, the real, that being a thinker, you know, it's such a gift to be a thinker, but it's a curse because you can spend time just analyzing yourself and scrutinizing yourself and all your flaws, which I think is the absolute worst, you know? Yeah. Even the world, like, I mean, yes, we're going through like this dark time and all this crazy stuff is happening, but there's still beauty in the world, you know? And I think there's a reason why it's like there's so many creative people who also struggle with mental illness and depression, you know? Yes. Because of this way that our brains work. And I think if we don't deliberately and intentionally fill our brains and our lives with good stuff, with positive stuff, with information, artwork, creativity that fills us up, and people that like fill us up. Like you have to work at it. Like the way that you work at, you know, being better at your schoolwork, or the way that you work at perfecting your craft or working out or whatever. You have to like work at being a positive person. Yeah. Because it's too easy to be a depressive artist. For real, says the
struggling
artist. Yeah, for real.
Struggling, starving artist.
Peeling me off the floor. It's hard.
Exactly.
But we have this amazing gift, right?
So how did you get into writing poetry? When did you realize you had a gift?
So I kind of remember keeping a journal from the time that I really learned how to read. Like if I had like a notebook, or I remember like my mother's old diaries, you know, back when people still put their appointments in diaries, I would take the old ones and use them as journals or staple together books. And so kind of learning how to read and loving reading and practicing writing kind of happened at the same time. And when I was about 10, Our grade 5, I had a teacher, Mrs. Saskin, who was amazing. I think she was like an old hippie. I'm still in touch with her on Facebook. She was brilliant. We had to keep journals in class, and we would write to her and she would write back. So sometimes it was about schoolwork, but sometimes it would become about personal stuff.
Yeah.
And she was the first person to say to me, like, you really have a gift. Like, don't ever stop doing this, you know? So, and I was like 10, 11 years old at that time. But then what do? I mean, there were no artists in my family. Nobody had ever told me that you could make a living doing this, you know? Like the world of the arts and entertainment and literature, it felt like it was there. So for years, my journal was just something that lived under my bed. It was my world, you know? And I would write the lyrics of songs I like or the lyrics of rappers that I like, and then my own stuff, and then when I got to university, I discovered the poetry scene. I realized, like, wow, there are people who keep journals and they pull them out from under their beds and they say there's this stuff to each other. Oh my God, what? Like, this is a thing? And yeah, my brain exploded. I think everything inside of me just exploded. I couldn't believe it. I was like, what? This happens? This is huh? And I mean, it took me some time to like work up the courage to be able to do it, but I did it and I didn't stop. I mean, yeah, it exploded my world. And made me realize, like, you can build a life off of your creativity in so many different ways. Yeah. Every artist I know is different. We all earn a living doing different things, sometimes similar, sometimes not. Every artist that I know has their own, like, fingerprint, like, this is their work, and you can see, like, this is their work, you know? And just that thing of the diversity of the arts, of artists, the different ways that you can build a life doing this, the many ways that you can grow, that is what still keeps me excited. That's what still keeps me interested. In spite of all of the nonsense of the industry and having to be an adult and a grown-up doing this, but yes, like, that curiosity is still what keeps it interesting for me.
So I would like to ask, do you think poetry is art, and why? Because growing up, people didn't really see poetry as something serious. People no singing, dancing, rapping, that's art. But poetry is just some depressed person saying nonsense most of the time. So I want to ask that, do you think poetry is art, and why do you think so?
Yes, I definitely think poetry is art. I think poetry, in fact, is like the crown jewel of language. Like all of the literary arts and many other art forms aspire to what poetry does with language, you know? Poetry is, it can live in any medium. It can be combined with any medium. I think one of the big tragedies of our country and our time is that our people are not exposed to the beauty and the breadth of the arts and what so many artists in even our country are already doing, right? Where I don't expect people to understand what's happening, like, in the poetry scene, because where would they see it?
That's it.
Where are they being exposed to poetry festivals and books and theater and the interesting places where poetry lives, you know? I get to see those things because I'm a part of that world, but, like, I also am very much aware of the fact that world deserves a bigger slice of the mainstream as well. You know, people would be so much better as human beings, would be more sensitive, would be more articulate, would be more literate in so many different ways if we were exposed to more poetry and more of the arts, you know? When I started to see poets who looked like me, who had similar experiences that I'd had, you know, as a Black girl or as an outsider or as a feminist or, you know, as somebody who lives between worlds, you know, when I started reading literature that mirrored me, then I started to see a place for myself in the world of literature, you know, then I started to see a place for my voice, you know. So it's like, it's a heavy burden, because not only do you have to make your art, right, as a poet, you know, as somebody who loves language, but you're also going to constantly be teaching your people about your art, you know. But then the good thing is that people know what's good and what's not, like intuitively. So even people, I've had so many people that I've performed for and shared work for or spoken in front of who are like, I hated poetry at school, or I was never exposed to poetry like this, or I never cared about poetry, I never thought that I would like it, but this makes sense to me. I love this. I love what you do, you know? Yeah. So you're going to have the beautiful gift of being able to get a lot of people who never thought that they could like what you do to have their eyes open to a whole new world just because you are doing it.
I agree with you, because in schools, we are not taught how to write poems. We are taught to analyze other people's poems. You know, the sonnet, the famous Shakespeare thing. Yeah, so we literally are taught how to analyze it and how to, but we are not taught how to write it. And in that way, it makes us see it as impossible for us to literally write poetry. You see, so I have a question for you, Lebo, Mrs. Lebo. You are a great performance poet. You are amazing. I remember the first time seeing you, I was with Sam at the camp. She showed us your video, and I was like, wow. And I was literally inspired, but I didn't write before that camp. Really? Yeah, but I always knew, you know what, I used to perform people's poems, like provincial league, school competitions, but I didn't know, I could also write
your own.
My own.
Wow.
Yeah, but I always wanted to, but I didn't have the inspiration to, Yeah, so I met Sam, and I was introduced to Expressive Arts, and I saw your video, and I was like, wow, you know what, I'm gonna do the Who I Am when I go to sleep tonight. And tomorrow I came with my piece. Okay, yeah. Then I came with my piece and everything. So you are such a very amazing performance poet.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, I
so
love your performance. Yeah, literally
that makes me so happy.
Yeah, and so what advice would you give a beginner like me, like in terms of performing poetry on stage?
Yo, where to start?
Where do you even start?
It's been a lifetime for you, right?
I know, my gosh. Okay, so let me see if I can share my greatest hits, right? Read as much as you can, read as widely as you can, and read everything, and also be conscious of text that you are being exposed to that's not necessarily even thought of traditionally as text, right? So we take in a lot of text. We're taking in more text than ever, even on social media, but it's still information, it's still text, right? You're taking in text all the time from rappers and from songs and from, so be more mindful about what you're already taking in and deliberately try to take in more that comes from different places, unexpected places. And then also with everything that you take in, try to be conscious of the fact that is coming from a particular perspective, a particular worldview, right? So all the information that we receive is information that's created by somebody, right? That's disseminated, sent out by somebody else, right? Who are those people? Why do those people want to be on my Instagram feed right now? What do they get out of me consuming them right now? Who's this person who wants me to understand this war in this way? Who's this person who wants me to understand this story of load shedding in this way? Start to think about perspective, because when you start to see all the different perspectives around you, then you can also start to think more about what your own perspective is in the sea of perspectives.
Your perspectives is a title for a poem.
Right. And then there's a great book by Julia Cameron called The Artist's Way. I think we've spoken a million times about The Artist's Way. I keep coming back to that book because just the basics in that book are like lifelong lessons. She talks about journaling every day, spending 30 minutes journaling, and like free form writing. So don't worry about punctuation, don't worry about spelling, don't worry about language even. Just write, just get it down. It's a way of like almost like dumping, because as writers, as creatives, there's a lot going on in our brains all the time. Sometimes you need to just dump like that first wave of thoughts or the superficial stuff to get at what it is that you really want to say, So journaling And also going on an artist date with yourself. So something cool, interesting, fun, creative that you want to do purely for your creativity. Sometimes it's a movie that you want to watch, or a series that you want to watch, or an album that you've been meaning to listen to, or somebody's EP just dropped and I haven't had a chance to listen to it all week. I'm going to make a date with myself and listen to it, you know? But something that is purely just an indulgence for your creativity.
And there's a sense of when you're doing those artist dates, it's to bring your full presence to it. Because when you know that you're doing that, I've got an hour to spend with myself today, then you suddenly are in it in a very different way. So you'll listen to the music differently, right? Or even if you're just taking a walk, you know, you'll suddenly become very present about how you're walking. Yes. And it's all that kind of stuff that makes you just go, oh, start getting these great ideas, right? There's something that she says as well, that morning pages is you...
Morning pages,
morning
that's what
pages
she calls them, yes.
Is you almost communicating to your higher self, and the artist date is receiving from your higher self.
Oh, that's nice.
So it's this beautiful, you know, receptive
really
and giving
nice.
kind of cycle that happens, feeds your artistic soul.
Just to touch on what you said, Ma, about the whole music thing, I find Lauryn Hill amazing.
Yeah,
Like,
she's
I just find
amazing.
myself listening to the Miseducation of Lauryn Hill like a lot.
Over
I
and
can
over and over and
somehow
over again.
relate to what she's saying.
Yes.
And to touch on what Mariah said, that I hate analyzing poetry at school. It's bad. Like, I don't
But do
understand.
you hate analyzing, or do you hate the poetry that you're analyzing?
I hate analyzing.
Okay.
It's the fact that I don't understand a thing.
But if somebody said analyze Lauryn Hill, you'd be able to do that.
Yeah.
So it's the poem.
So it's the poems.
Yeah, it means they choose the wrong poems, honestly. Cause
They choose the wrong
they bad, honestly. It's
Also,
rare that
what-
I find myself enjoying a poem that we do at school.
Wow.
And they somehow expect you, just because you do poetry, to be able to analyze a poem. And you just, they're like, I do not know how to do any of this.
So are there songs or series or movies or other kinds of content that you consume that you kind of experience the same way you experience poetry, or the way you would like to experience poetry?
Yeah, there are actually a lot.
Like what inspires you both? What are you both into right now?
For me, it's music.
Okay.
When I feel like writing, I usually listen to music, because I feel like that's where I can get more of a connection. Like, even actually most of my poems come from music. Like, I find my favorite song, and especially if it has to do something that has to do with my story, I'm just able to like write. Like 5 minutes is a lot of time.
Wow.
Just jot down everything I need to, honestly.
This is called a round of
This is
applause.
Very, very good. Very good. And you, Mariah? What are you into? Like, what inspires you? What fills your heart up in the way that poetry does?
It's simply my emotions. I don't listen to anything. I want quietness, because once I start listening to something, like, I easily get distracted. Literally, yeah.
Okay.
So it has to be quiet, the environment that I'm in. Or I also can, like, you know what you spoke about, the stanza a day, something that you spoke about. Yeah, I also do that when there are people, or when I'm not feeling okay and there's a lot of people and they're all happy and I'm not happy. So I put down that stanza down, even with their noise, I can do that. But when I'm like, when I'm writing at home, it has to be quiet. I cannot listen to any music. Yeah. And I agree with her, yes, because at school, the poems we do not relate to. I didn't relate to any of the poems that I was analyzing at school. Literally, I couldn't even understand what I was saying. I was analyzing it, for grades, because I have to. It's an exam.
That's so crazy. How can that still be a problem in 2023? Because that was the same issue I had. It was the exact same issue that I had at school. I was like, I don't think I saw myself as a poet, because I didn't see myself in this that we were being asked to analyze, I loved Shakespeare, and I still love Shakespeare, but I was like, no, I didn't see the connections between, I don't know, like Shakespeare and Lauryn Hill and the stuff that I was actually reading that I thought was really interesting, that's terrible. Schools.
And that's sad, really.
Hey, and especially when there's so many incredible contemporary
poets. There's so much interesting stuff that's happening in literature and in the arts right now. Like, and I mean, there's so many vibrant artists like here in South Africa who are doing critical, interesting stuff that you guys would love. Like, how is this not making its way in front of you? This is like...
So this is a note to educators and the entire education department.
Yes, please.
We're sorry. We're kind of coming to the end of our interview, so like please like jump in there if you've got anything you want to ask Miss Lebo, Mashile for the last time.
Mam Lebo, you're amazing. I remember listening to the You and I performance, and I just felt so connected to it, which actually made me nervous for today, because I'm like, oh my God, where am I when it comes to performing poetry? Like, I never performed my poetry, honestly. I was so used to like, okay, you just write and then you say it. Until I was exposed to a school thingy where I was the only person who just stood there and spoke, and people came there in the traditional attires. And I was like, oh, Cindy, you have to perform it. So I've learned.
Oh, wow. And then what did you do?
I was embarrassed.
Yo.
It was trauma, honestly. So I remember Sam basically did this thing where she took us to a theater, and I feel like that's when my love for theater came, because there are times now where I'm like, I could see myself on stage performing a poem, and I just feel very comfortable with that whole thing, that I'm now able to perform poetry, and I just feel free, honestly. It's like I'm no longer this caged bird.
Oh, that's wonderful.
That is
makes me so
beautiful conclusion of our little chat.
right? Stunning. That makes me so happy. Yeah.
And it's time for some performances, don't you think?
Yeah.
Some sharing of some poems.
Okay.
Yeah, definitely. I'll come back to you.
Free your mind. The mind is a very powerful tool. It can enslave or empower us, plunge us into the depths of misery, or take us to the heart of ecstasy. We can build or break ourselves mentally. We can decide to be blind and enslave our minds, but we can also decide not to be blind and escape our negative minds. One would ask themselves, what is this love? What is she on about? Does she know? Maybe I do not know. Maybe I do not know what you're going through. My problems could never be compared to yours. That is true. But do you know what is also true? The mind is a very powerful tool. Perhaps you're still in the dark, not knowing which turn to take. Brace yourself, for this might set you aback. Remember the footsteps you took, the ones on that sand that's full of thorns. Let us trace them. The destination is in the past.
Don't you see me? Or are you darkened by the evil within? Don't you see the pain you have caused me, my joy snatched from my soul within? A broken spirit, my heart in pieces. For what sin have I committed to be condemned with such brutality, such cruelty and inhumanity? You have taken my pride, my integrity, tell me why. For my soul cries in despair, this injustice granted in my name. For hopeless it has left me in what seems as foreign lands. Who then is to save me from the shame that I clearly do not deserve? Who then is to help me, for my misery has only sunk deeper and tiredness has overwhelmed me? Who then is to help me face this truth? Because I need to set myself free. I need to do this for me.
Thank you.
This pain is extremely excruciating. It's strangling my brain with its cold and rough hands, condemning my ability to thrive. my lungs too overcrowded with anger and agony. Making it impossible for me to inhale intensive and crucial breaths, battling to inhale positivity and possibilities. My intestines too damaged to produce such mechanism. Is this what pain feels like? This one will pull me down. It's devouring me. It's feeding like a thirsty, vicious parasite, like its only purpose is to diminish the fight left in me. Whenever I close my eyes, my thoughts ploy themselves in an unbearable cage. Tears being the only thing to surface, cherishing the hideous thoughts and torments. Confused and agitated hands shutting my mouth. At that moment, hasty solutions hit my wrecked brain. What if all of the suffering could end? What if I had a choice? I could erase my miserable existence. Then all my pain will vanish. I have nothing to live for. No progress, no purpose, just pain. Each day, the voice is getting louder and louder, more realistic and terrifying. Please, listen to me when I say I am not okay.
So, Ms. Lebo, I've got some feedback for you and some compliments I need to read from pupils at Zinniaville Secondary School. All right,
Hello,
so firstly,
Zinniaville.
Hello, Zinniaville.
Hello.
Okay. Ms. Katlejo says, firstly, please tell my Lebo. Tell her I'm a huge fan of her work and that she inspires me. Secondly, tell her I admire her courage to express herself without boundaries and talk about issues which many are afraid to address. Thirdly, that I absolutely love her work and hope that one day I too can be but a fraction of the poet that she is.
Oh, man.
Ms. Katlejo.
Thank you, Katlejo. Thank you so much.
Then Saba says, what was the story behind the poem Sisters?
Oh, what an amazing, wow, what a great question. Oh my gosh. Sure, that's an old poem, but that's one of my favorite poems. It was an affirmation. It was an affirmation for the women who inspire me, and I guess like the conversation we were having a bit earlier, the women that I didn't at the time often see reflected in literature or see reflected in the poetry that I was reading, you know, or in mainstream media. And yeah, it was my first attempt at kind of writing into being what it was that I wanted to see. And that you can do that. Like, you don't see it, you can make it, you know? I'm so happy. I'm so happy she loves that poem.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well done, Saba.
Thank you.
And then Miss Didi says, I would really love to know what her main inspiration is. What is it that gets her to wake up every day and decide that she's still going to pursue her passion in writing and poetry? Where did it all begin? And then she says, it would really help us grow in so many ways.
Yo.
She inspires me already, and I would really love to know the journey she's been on and is currently going through. Wow.
Oh, thank you for that question. What a big layered question, yo. I wake up every day because I got bills, yo. Yo, but I guess I'm still passionate about what I do because it's rewarding, because nothing feels better than having made something beautiful that other people can connect to. And because I love the process of making work, I love collaborating with other people. I love what happens when I combine what I do with another medium, you know, with film or with dance or with music or with, then it comes alive in a different way, you know? So I feel like the part of me that was excited about poetry and excited about becoming an artist, whatever, 20 plus years ago, I still get to touch that feeling. I still get to touch that feeling of, oh my God, this thing is magical. What? Oh, I get to do this. I get to do this. And I think that feeling is what keeps me going, in spite of all of the challenges, because they're many. But that thing, that's why I still have faith in what I do. Nice.
Good question. All right, then Miss Sophia says, how can she advise young artists to overcome obstacles that put them down?
Woof. That's real. Look, artists all over the world are marginalized. The artists that we see and the artists that are perceived as successful are only a fraction of the millions upon millions upon millions of people who see themselves as artists, who engage with their lives creatively, who make creative work, who are part of creative industries. So, don't measure your own self-worth by celebrity or by what mainstream media is telling you. Become a student of your craft. Like if you love poetry, for example, that means you're going to be a lifelong student of this thing called poetry, of literature, of all of the masters who have done this before you. I still see myself as a student of what it is that I do, and that allows me also to look at it with fresh eyes. That allows me to change direction, that allows me to make mistakes, Give yourself permission also to do those things. Give yourself permission to wake up and decide to do something completely different to the way that you did it before, because that's also part of creativity, right?
Definitely.
And then I would say, there's always going to be people who have opinions about what it is that you do, about the way that you live your life, the way that you look, every aspect of your life. You're going to find a million people who are going to tell you how you are wrong, stupid, crazy, messed up for being who you are. So, and I think as an artist also, which can be equally confusing, you're also going to, when you start sharing your work with people, find a ton of people who also love you and affirm you and applaud you. And so you have the people who hate you on one side, you have the people who love you on the other, and you are just walking a road in the middle, right? And our job is to touch people, So if I'm doing my job correctly, some people should be angry, right? Because that's also them being touched, Some people should be upset. Some people should actually hate me because I've touched them and I've rocked them in their little world, and that's what it's supposed to do. But if for me, I think the biggest challenge is to not get caught up with that, to understand that that's just a moment as well. Right? People have opinions, the way people breathe in and out. I mean, I have opinions that I throw away all the time, hectic opinions about people who I don't even know. And especially with social media now, you've got millions of people and all sorts of information coming into your space all the time. We all regurgitating these opinions, vomiting opinions on all these platforms. An opinion is worth nothing. The thing that matters the most is you waking up and making something that didn't exist before.
Yes.
That's what matters.
Amen.
Yeah.
Yes.
And opinions change because people change. The way that I've also found that my work that has stood the test of time, some of it is 10 years ago when I wrote a piece, people didn't get it. Then something had to happen in their lives or in the culture or in the space or in the environment for people to get to a point where they could hear what I was saying 10 years ago. That's also part of the process as well, is accepting that actually if I'm doing what I'm supposed to be doing right now, I'm supposed to be misunderstood. Right? It's a tough one. It's a tough one. I mean, when I'm sitting, and angsting over negative comments on Twitter, of course, I'm not this deep, right? But after many storms and many years, 5 years, 10 years, 20 years later, honestly, you don't care. I don't care about what all those people said. I care more about what I did.
Yes. You know what? On that note, I have to say, what a brilliant way to end this beautiful session. It has been an absolute honor having you join us. Thank you so much. You have brought such value to all of us. And with so much love, I say Thank you.
Oh, thank you so much. This has been wonderful. I needed this.
Good.
Thank you.
Goodbye, everybody, and thank you for joining us. Until next time.
Go easy on me, baby.
Beyond water and bones, beyond blood and breath, the body is the soul's physical address. We are light, cocooned in skin. Sun children growing in the universe's womb. Each of us is a star draped in human form. Our bodies are God's couture, fleshy fabric dripping color and culture on a cosmic catwalk. This body is too much for too many, and not enough to be right for those left to decide what beauty is. TV and magazines do not understand the symmetry between design and purpose. A masterfully crafted machine created to serve as witness to our evolution. All that we are, all that we have been, all that we can and will ever be is housed in a sanctuary of skin. No thought escapes the body. No emotion eludes the body. This is my home, my transport, my support, my friend. So when the world renounces my beauty, I reply, the landscape of the body cannot be seen by the eye. My skin knows me by heart. When I laugh, thunder rumbles, remixing pain into song. Moonstones sparkle in my smile, and I know that I need the darkness as much as it needs me to be a star. And when I cry, rain falls from my eyes, never touching the ground. My waters disappear to join the air, and I know that my heart is everywhere. The roads in my face will tell you that I have withstood sandstorms and held the eye of the hurricane with my stare. These arms have hugged the wind. These hips have carried boulders, birthed new lives, and blessed the gazes of their beholders. This heart is a rock, melting when moved, solidifying in sorrow. This mind is mining gems whose brilliance courses through oceans to wash up on the riverbeds of the worthy. Work is my domain. Beauty is my inheritance. Skin is my shelter. When I love, I give all that I am. 4 barrels of water, 3 slices of fire, 2 pounds of earth bound together by air in a house of skin. There is love in washing over experiences. There is love in offering libations at the altar of the self. There is love in these hands. Inhale beauty. Exhale discipline. Inhale sun. Exhale African. Inhale memory. Exhale touch. Inhale protection. Exhale